Imagine a city, a jewel on the crossroads of continents, built not just with stone and mortar, but with the very echoes of empire. For over 1,000 years, it stood as a beacon of civilization, a bulwark against encroaching tides, the last glorious ember of Rome's ancient flame. Constantinople, its colossal walls, scarred by centuries of siege, were a testament to its endurance, a whispered promise of impregnability. The serene waters of the Bosphorus, glinting under the setting sun, seemed to cradle it in eternal peace. But beneath this surface of enduring majesty, a storm was brewing. On the horizon, dark clouds gathered, not of nature, but of ambition and an unyielding will. This is the story of a city's last stand, a desperate struggle for survival against an overwhelming tide, and the final, devastating collapse of an empire that had defied oblivion for a millennium. This is the siege of Constantinople, the fall of a world. To understand the gravity of Constantinople's fall, we must first appreciate its towering significance. For centuries, it was the beating heart of the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, a direct continuation of Rome itself after the West had crumbled. From its founding in 330 AD by Emperor Constantine the Great, it was a city of unparalleled wealth, culture, and strategic importance. Its walls, the legendary Theodosian walls, stretched for miles, a triple line of defense considered impregnable, repelling Goths, Avars, Slavs, and Arabs alike. But by the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire was a shadow of its former self. Once a vast dominion, it had dwindled to little more than the city itself and a few scattered territories. Internal strife, economic decline, and the relentless pressure from both crusaders in the west and the burgeoning Ottoman Empire in the east had bled it dry. The grandeur remained in its magnificent churches and palaces, but the gilded surfaces often masked decay and despair. The air within the city walls was thick with anxiety, a palpable sense of impending doom. Emperor Constantine XI, Palaiologos, the last Byzantine emperor, faced an impossible task. His treasury was depleted, his population sparse, perhaps only 50,000 souls compared to its former millions, and his army a meager force of around 7,000 men, a desperate mix of citizens, monks, and a few foreign volunteers, against walls that ideally required tens of thousands to defend. He was a man of courage and conviction, keenly aware that he was the steward of a legacy stretching back to Augustus himself. His gaze, fixed on the distant horizon, was a blend of weary determination and a desperate search for salvation. He pleaded for aid from Catholic Europe, a continent long estranged from Orthodox Byzantium. His messengers rode across mountains and seas, carrying desperate appeals to kings and popes. But the memory of the Fourth Crusade, when Western knights had sacked Constantinople in 1204, still festered. Religious differences, political rivalries, and a preoccupation with their own affairs meant that his cries largely fell on deaf ears. Christendom, once united against a common foe, was fragmented and indifferent. Yet, a few answered the call. Among them, the Genoese commander Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, a seasoned warrior, arrived with 700 elite soldiers, a small but crucial reinforcement. Constantine welcomed him as a brother in arms, a rare glimmer of hope in a darkening world. Together, emperor and citizens, soldiers and monks, worked tirelessly, patching up crumbling defenses, fortifying gates, and preparing for the inevitable. The stage was set for a final, heroic, and ultimately tragic defense. Across the Bosphorus, in the heart of the burgeoning Ottoman Empire, a different kind of destiny was being forged. Sultan Mehmed II, who ascended to the throne in 1451 at the astonishing age of 19, was a ruler unlike any before him. Nicknamed Fatih, the Conqueror, his mind was a tempest of ambition, intellect, and an unshakable belief in his own destiny. He was fluent in multiple languages, studied history, astronomy, and military tactics. But above all, he was obsessed with one goal: the conquest of Constantinople. It was not merely a strategic objective, it was a sacred quest, foretold in prophecy, a coronation for his burgeoning empire. He understood that Constantinople, nestled amidst Ottoman territories, was a dagger pointed at the heart of his empire, a constant reminder of Byzantine defiance. He systematically eliminated internal rivals, consolidated his power, and then began meticulous preparations for the siege, an endeavor of unprecedented scale and ingenuity. He knew that the legendary walls could not be taken by conventional means. He needed something revolutionary, something terrifying. Mehmet's strategic brilliance extended to naval power. He ordered the construction of a new fortress, Rumeli directly opposite an older Ottoman fort, Anadolu Hisar, on the narrowest point of the Bosphorus. With these two fortresses, he effectively choked off the strait, preventing any aid from reaching Constantinople by sea from the Black Sea. By the spring of 1453, Mehmet had assembled an army estimated at 80,000 to 150,000 men, a sea of soldiers, banners, and an arsenal of the most advanced weaponry of the age. He positioned his forces around the vast arc of the Theodosian walls. The red tulip of the Ottoman Empire was about to bloom in blood. On April 6, 1453, the Ottoman siege began. The ground trembled with the thunderous roar of over 100 cannons, their projectiles tearing into the ancient walls. Basilica, the super cannon, fired 7 times a day, each shot a devastating blow. The very foundations of the city, which had stood for a millennium, were now under a relentless, unimaginable assault. The sound was deafening, the dust choked the air, and the smell of gunpowder hung heavy. The Byzantine defenders, though vastly outnumbered, fought with desperate courage. Under the inspired leadership of Constantine XI and Giustiniani Longo, they employed ingenious tactics. Each night, under the cover of darkness, they would work tirelessly to repair the breaches caused by the cannons, filling gaps with rubble, timber, and even barrels of earth. It was a race against time, a nightly resurrection of their defenses, only to see them pulverized again the next day. Mehmet launched wave after wave of assaults. First came the irregular Bashi bazooks, a chaotic and expendable force designed to exhaust the defenders. Then, the more disciplined Anatolian troops, followed by the elite Janissaries, the Sultan's highly trained fanatical infantry. The defenders, often fighting for days without rest, repelled every attack, inflicting heavy casualties on the Ottomans. Mehmet, in his tent, remained unyielding, convinced that sheer attrition would eventually break the Byzantine spirit. Inside the city, life was a constant vigil. Churches became sanctuaries, filled with the desperate prayers of citizens. Priests led solemn processions through the rubble-strewn streets, carrying holy icons, seeking divine intervention. Sleep was a luxury, fear a constant companion. Yet, amidst the terror, there was a profound sense of unity, a shared understanding that they were fighting not just for a city, but for a civilization, for their faith, for their very identity. While the land walls endured a pounding, Constantinople's sea defenses seemed impenetrable. The Golden Horn, the city's natural harbor, was protected by a massive chain, stretching from Constantinople to the Genoese colony of Galata, preventing any Ottoman ships from entering. This bottleneck was vital, allowing the Byzantines to concentrate their limited forces on the land walls. Mehmet, however, was not easily deterred. His fleet, while dominating the Sea of Marmara, was useless against the chain. Then, on the night of April 22nd, in an act of staggering ingenuity and sheer manpower, the Ottomans began to drag their ships, over 70 of them, overland. Sails were unfurled, making them appear as if sailing across the hills, a surreal, ghostly fleet gliding through the night. By morning, the Byzantines awoke to an impossible sight. The Ottoman fleet, previously held at bay, now lay anchored within the Golden Horn, behind their defensive chain. In the early hours of May 29th, the final assault began. The Ottoman army, in 3 massive waves, surged forward under a deafening roar of drums, trumpets, and battle cries. The first wave, the irregulars, swarmed the breaches, their numbers overwhelming. Then came the disciplined Anatolian soldiers. The fighting was brutal, desperate, hand-to-hand combat on the shattered walls and in the narrow breaches. For hours, the Byzantines held their ground with superhuman effort. But then, a devastating blow. Giustiniani Longo, their most skilled commander, was severely wounded, possibly by a cannonball or an arrow, and had to be carried from the walls. His departure was a catastrophic blow to morale, scattering the defenders and creating disarray. A few Ottomans slipped through the Kirkeporta, raising their banner on a tower. This sight, coupled with Giustiniani's injury and the sheer exhaustion of the defenders, broke the Byzantine line. The city fell. Ottoman troops poured through the breaches, and the horror of a medieval sack descended upon Constantinople. For 3 days, the city suffered. Citizens were massacred, enslaved, its treasures plundered. The Hagia Sophia, the magnificent cathedral, was desecrated, its mosaics covered, its altar destroyed, before being converted into a mosque. The capital of the Byzantine Empire, the Second Rome, had fallen. If you were gripped by this epic tale, please hit that like button, subscribe to Myth and Battle for more journeys into the heart of history's greatest conflicts, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video.